When Ethan Ward handed over the keys to his most prized possession, a vintage 1967 Mustang, he thought he was buying more than a surgery. He thought he was buying time, love, and a future with the woman he cherished. But what came instead shattered every piece of his heart. Ethan had always been a simple man with big dreams. In the city of Brookhaven, people knew him as the mechanic who could bring any engine back to life. His workshop smelled of grease and gasoline, and though he didn't make much, he carried a treasure, his Mustang. The car wasn't just metal and wheels, it was his late father's legacy, the very thing that kept him grounded when the world spun too fast. But love has a way of testing us. And for Ethan, love came in the form of Lydia, a graceful woman with soft auburn hair and eyes that sparkled even in the dimmest light. They had met at a small diner, bonded over coffee, and quickly built a life together. Ethan adored her, and when they married, he promised her the world, even if all he had to give were pieces of his own. Then came the storm. Lydia fell gravely ill. Doctors spoke in terms Ethan didn't fully understand. Tumors, operations, costs that dwarfed his modest savings. But one thing was clear. Lydia needed surgery, and she needed it soon. Without hesitation, Ethan made the hardest decision of his life. He polished the Mustang until it gleamed one last time, then sold it to a collector for a sum that covered Lydia's procedure. The moment he watched the car drive away, it felt like part of his soul had gone with it. But he told himself it was worth it because love meant sacrifice. The surgery was a success. Lydia regained her strength, her cheeks flushed with color again. Ethan felt relief wash over him, believing their nightmare was behind them. Then, only weeks later, the second storm struck. Ethan came home one evening to find their closet half empty, Lydia's belongings gone, and a single note on the kitchen table. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. I've met someone else." The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. He staggered backward, collapsing into the chair he had built with his own hands. His sacrifice, his love, his dreams, vanished in ink on paper. Neighbors whispered, pity in their eyes. Some said Lydia had fallen for a wealthy businessman, a man who promised her the comfort Ethan never could. For Ethan, every rumor was another dagger. He didn't just lose his wife, he lost the very reason he had sold the only thing connecting him to his father. But grief does strange things. Instead of breaking completely, Ethan chose silence. He continued working in his garage, fixing cars for strangers, while inside, his heart carried an ache too deep for words. What he didn't know was that life, in its cruel but mysterious way, was setting the stage for something greater. When Lydia walked away, Ethan thought his story was over. But sometimes, endings are disguises for beginnings. And what he did next not only rebuilt his broken heart, it lifted an entire community. Weeks turned into months. Ethan worked long nights at the garage, but the silence in his small home grew unbearable. He no longer dreamed of rebuilding his Mustang, no longer believed love had a place for him. One rainy evening, while locking up his shop, Ethan noticed a boy, barely 10 years old, struggling to push a broken bicycle through the mud. The chain dangled, rusted and jammed. The boy's clothes were thin, his shoes torn, his eyes weary. "You okay there, kid?" Ethan asked gently. The boy nodded shyly but said nothing. Ethan saw the hunger in his face, the loneliness in his slouched shoulders. Without another word, he wheeled the bike inside his garage. "Sit tight," he said. An hour later, the bike shined like new. Ethan tightened the bolts, greased the chain, and handed it back. "There you go. She's ready to ride again." The boy's eyes lit up, his smile breaking through the gloom. "Thank you, sir," he whispered before pedaling off into the night. That moment did something to Ethan's heart. It was small, almost invisible, but it cracked the shell of his grief. The next week, more children came, some with broken bikes, others with toy cars, some just to watch. Word spread quickly. The quiet mechanic who had lost everything was fixing things for kids, free of charge. Ethan didn't plan it, but soon his garage transformed. On weekends, families gathered. Kids laughed as their bikes were restored, their skateboards repaired, their hope renewed. For every wheel he tightened, for every spark plug he fixed, Ethan found pieces of his own heart stitching back together. Local newspapers caught the story. Mechanic turns garage into haven for kids. Donations trickled in, parts, tools, even volunteers. What began as a simple act of kindness grew into a community project. Ethan called it Ward's Wheels of Hope. And then, one afternoon, as sunlight poured across the garage, a familiar rumble echoed outside. A man pulled up in none other than a 1967 Mustang, the very one Ethan had sold. The owner, a wealthy collector, had read Ethan's story. "You sold this for love," the man said, stepping out. "But what you've built here, it's bigger than any car." With a smile, he placed the keys in Ethan's hand. "This belongs with you." Ethan's knees buckled. He ran his hand over the familiar curves of the car, tears streaming down his face. It was as if his father's spirit had returned, whispering, "I'm proud of you." That night, for the first time in months, Ethan felt whole. Lydia was gone, but in her absence, he had found something greater: purpose. His pain had fueled a movement of kindness that changed lives, proving that even shattered hearts can build something beautiful.